as I start figuring out what I need to do next for my next type of video. So I had to think of really, really hard for myself. And I thought to myself, I haven't really picked on, not really picked on, but I really haven't put myself to getting back to Gen X. And Gen X and Gen Z and millennials and all that, because we'd like to do a couple, we've done a handful of those videos on this channel already, and they are well worth the watch. Find them. You will be entertained and you will be educated somewhat. And I think we need to continue that. It is 2024. Gen Z and the millennials and even Gen Alpha will start continuing to beat the holy you-know-what out of everybody. So I'm geared up in a very, very different Penguins hoodie. It's a starter hoodie. These things were big in the 90s. Starter was very big in the 90s. We had the best, at the time, some of the best brands ever. If we wore those today, we would be laughed at. If we wore the styles that were big in the 90s, we would be laughed at. But then again, we're laughing at some of the stuff that Gen Z is doing now. I give the millennials credit. They're trying to bring some of that stuff back, which it somewhat worked. Quite honestly, they will never know the world we had as far as what we were able to show off to the public, in school, in clubs, going out to the mall, going out with your friends, going cruising, whatever you had. If you were in style and you had some of these brands and you had some of this fashion, trust me, it's one thing to have something now. It's another thing to hold on to it, and hopefully it will become a relic. We're going to get on the laptop, and trust me, this is going to be a video you're going to want to check out. Let's go to work. As I'm all situated and ready to go and don my UFC Boston Scully, if you ever get a chance to check those boys out, I'm the last couple of years I'm starting to wear these and I kind of like them, but they're up there, but so is everything else. But check those out if you want to get a chance to have to set yourself a little bit. But I want to get this video done probably as smooth as possible. And as always, wherever that may be, wherever it's on which side it is my subscribe button. Hit that. Definitely want to check. Definitely check a like. Do all that wonderful stuff. Throw a comment in. It helps the channel out. And as always, we do appreciate you. But sorry, this thing right here, and it's hard to draw out there. Remember Starter? Remember Starter? That was big back in the 90s. And they're still hanging around. They used to do NFL stuff. Well, this is the world we live in. And we basically, in this time of frame, had the best run of our fashion, probably ever. But we may have had the best time of fashion ever in the 90s. Now, did we run the 90s? Not necessarily. The 70s and the 80s had their great fashion as well, without shadow of a doubt. However, probably the roaring 20s probably beat us all because everybody and their mother probably had a zoot suit or a pinstripe suit or whatever. But we get to this point that Gen Z will do everything they can to embarrass the living, breathing bejesus out of us and even the early millennials. So with that in mind, I'm going to spin this bad boy around and I'm going to try to, and I will try to somewhat entertain you, let alone, I don't know, educate you on some of the great things we had to deal with in the late 80s, early 90s. First of all, let me just throw this at you. First of all, I bring hockey jerseys up because people don't think hockey's that great of a deal. First off, if you don't like hockey, there's something wrong with you. Number two, in fact, I just throw the Penguins jerseys up because these jerseys came in 1993, the year after they won the second Stanley Cup in a row. Now, the kicker to this is hockey jerseys were big in the hip-hop community, even the old LA Kings jerseys. All the old jerseys that were worn in the 90s were big in fashion, big in hip-hop, regardless of what it was. Plus, any basic team with the major thing being you didn't even have to like the team. If you bought this jersey, you found something to match it. It's big in NBA. It's big in NFL. It was big in any other sport. The person who ever owned the jersey, they didn't even have to like the team. They would be like, "Oh, I just want the jersey just because it matches my shoes." And that's not even, and they still do that today. But without a shadow of a doubt, um, these were without a doubt a big hip hop fashion, and it just picked up more and more in the hip hop community, not just in the NHL, but in the NBA. But people don't think hockey jerseys were fashionable. Go back in the 90s, they most definitely were. Now, I am going to scroll back and go to some of the greatest brands we ever had. Remember Fubu? Do you remember all 10,000 colors of Fubu stuff? Whether it was this type of jersey, a ball shirt, the jeans, the jeans that were big. So let me tell you, you could find these now probably at a Marshalls, at a freaking TJ Maxx or something for dirt cheap now. But this was a staple back in the 90s, without a doubt. Let's see. Where else can I go by? In the 90s, you had to have some of the best fashion. I need to find the. I mean, let me just hit this button. It's just a bunch of Google and stuff. Look at all the stuff that we had to deal with. All these different layers of fashion. I mean, we're talking some of the weirdest things. We couldn't do this now. We could probably get away with some of it, but not all of it. Like the baggy overalls were big in the early 90s. Like they were huge. Doesn't matter what brand they were. They were we were allowed to get away with the overalls. Another big thing was college sweatshirts, college crew sweatshirts. Doesn't matter who they were. Kind of like this model, kind of like this design. They were monstrous. Like you didn't even have to like like everybody had at least one or two, and they wore them to school. If you didn't have one, you were a loser. And I remember one time, like I wore one and I got the living bejesus beat out of me, it was a very bad story. And I'm not going to get into it because it had a very bad ending. But it was that one time where you actually wanted to be in the in crowd and you did it and you got picked on. And it really wasn't fair. But that is a true story. That is a true thing. The college crews were so big back in the day. For the ladies, if you did not have that guest triangle, that was one of the best things. That was also one of the bigger things was the guest jeans. Did you have one of those back then? I put this up as no fear clothing because good Lord, probably the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, everybody tried to find the best no fear shirt out there. They all had the best phrases and slogans. Go look them up. Go find them. They are relics without a shadow. And while I'm at no fear, I actually have to find this one. I have to bring Big Johnson's up because I really shouldn't even be putting this up, but this. We're trying to be a PG rated show here, but they also had one of some of the best like graphic T-shirts out there, and everyone had to find something in specific. And most of the places you could find this was this place. Was this place Gadzooks? There was a couple other places also in the mall, but this right here, Gadzooks was the staple to find a lot of the 90s gear, and it was so big in the 90s. And unfortunately, down the road, it changed to women only. No disrespect. And then, of course, malls are dying, and the Gadzooks brand went down. But this was the place to be. I could not agree more, and we had a couple of them in the run to begin with. Do you remember bum equipment? Oh, everybody had these things too. Everybody and their mother had bum equipment, a hoodie, a t-shirt, or whatever. Oversized. Size was, if you thought size mattered, these things you could be 5'1", a buck 10 soaking wet and wear a double extra large, and you would be in the in crowd. It is ridiculous. Let us get to that. I got out of that. Now I bring this up because this was all those button down, fashionable, like crazy bowling shirts done by a brand called YMLA. And I know this for a fact because I fell into that phase. I didn't have this shirt, but YMLA was also in Gadzooks, and they were big with the spandex shirts that were big with the big buff jocks, and they were huge as well. And as I bring that up, that this shows there's proof. That was the name of the brand. We also wore that a lot. The spandex shirts were in for the guys. I remember I had a couple of them myself. I even had this shirt in black, the plush velvet. Whether it was, I don't want to say it was the satin, but it was the really fine material. I owned this shirt, loved it. It was the hype at the time, and just happy I had something that went really well with this. That shirt, it had a bunch of flames on it and everything like that. All these different things. I miss that brand so much, but that was also a '90s fad. This was also kind of like the different layers of the jeans and dress pants along with the silk shirts. My last couple of years high school, that was a big deal. Those silk. I mean, I know a couple of people that still got away with them, but that was a big deal. Even if you wanted to either go to the clubs or just wanted to go and you were dressing up for your for trying to be the best dressed person in school. Uh, all these different design works, whether it was sweatpants or just a regular setup, they were also big. I mean, it was just design work, and it wasn't really just footwear. It was just the whole outfit. You had to bring that up as well. And see what I'm talking about with these layers. I mean, at the time, this was in. Also, at the time, tucking your shirt in was also kind of a big. If you let it out, that made you kind of a little bit of a weirdo because now you can have it untucked and it's actually fine. It's two different eras back in the day. Good lord, it just brings you back to memories so what. And bum was such a big deal. Do you guys remember the hypercolor? Do you guys remember putting your hand on? You had to like almost like I don't know if you had to charge it up, but when you put when you get the handprint on it, uh, people went on you and went off on you. Just forget it. I mean, that was such a big hit. The hypercolor was such a big hit back in the day. Do you remember Body Glove from the '90s? Now, Body Glove did a lot of hip hop stuff as well, whether it was just the actual body suits, the actual swim gear, and the fingerless gloves was also big. Body Glove was also a big '90s hip hop thing as well. Um, People were also big with Tommy Hilfiger. If you didn't have anything with Tommy Hilfiger, maybe even Nautica, maybe even Calvin Klein, they were both of those were probably the staples in the '90s. It was Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. Nautica was probably a close third. All three of them also had really good colognes and perfume as well, and that was also a big thing. Was the '90s cologne and perfume back then because everybody tried to have everything they could possibly do and possibly have to hit to that next level. I get you to shoe where LA Gear was such a big deal. Do you remember LA Gear? Do you remember BK British Knights? Do you remember these guys? People don't remember LA Gear or or BK. I remember I had one pair of British Knights. I remember that LA Gear was so big. I remember there were kangaroos when I was like '80s kid. I they had so many oddball different types of things. Even Asics was big at the time, and Nike was just starting to roll in and starting to make their big deals with Jordan and everything. But LA Gear, BK was, and there was also a couple other brands I don't know off the top of my head. But like I said, burning through this, I mean, BK had so many different ones. I mean, it was such a crazy thing. One thing the '80s and into the '90s was very big was bright colors, and I know the surf style came out here, and even these weird designs for windbreakers. Bright colors was always a big thing. and it didn't matter whether it was on Windbreakers or whatnot. But Windbreakers was also big. The Kangoo, the big Kangoo hats and in hip hop, they were also huge. Bongo clothing was also a huge thing back in the day, whether it was the shoes and the clothing as well. Esprit was also a very big brand back in the day as well. Banneton was another type of brand. And then I show you this thing. Where was all the different things? And you can actually look for this for you. And this you can actually Google this for yourself for the ladies in that platform. The platform stuff was starting to be big, whether it was in shoes and whatnot. It wasn't the Spice Girl times because that didn't come until later. But we're talking the bell bottoms were big, the tube tops were big, tanks were coming back, and bright colors. We couldn't get away with half of that stuff now, and I had to bring a whole bunch of that stuff to you now, uh, just for the actual fact of do you have any idea how awesome of a lifetime we had it? I give you all this that I just threw at you. I mean, there's so many other brands that I was fishing at. What is it? It's almost 2 a.m. that I'm doing this video. This was a fun thing to do. And I want you guys, whenever you get an opportunity, check this video out when you get an opportunity, please. And I do appreciate you. If there's a brand that I missed, throw a comment in because if you remember some of the big 90s fashion, put a comment in, chuck a like, throw everything in it because this is the great. I think we had some of the best fashion we ever had. And I don't want to hear this crap about, oh, you could have got a champion shirt back then for $10. Now it's like 50 and every Gen Z, late millennial will have 9,000 things of champion gear because it's the big thing now when we were almost embarrassed to wear champion back in the day. I miss the 90s. I miss that time of frame. This was it's my favorite time of the year favorite time of my life between the 90s and 2000s. That was my span of life. And being 49, I remember some of the greatest stuff. Some of the greatest stuff we warmed up we warmed up with. We had our styles, we had our fashion, we had our likes and our dislikes and our takes and our loves and our tastes of life and fashion. What was yours back in the day? Throw it up. There's no right or wrong because Gen Z's having all of this weird crap that we're doing now, especially with all the political crap and especially with all the other, you know, weird things that's going on. That is up to you. It's almost like a homework assignment, but this was fun to do. And as always, you enjoy some of the stuff we do. Whatever you decide to do, there's something for everything on this channel. So I do appreciate you making time to come hang out with us here. So before you head out, and go crash, hit that subscribe button wherever it is flying around here. Uh, Please hit that subscribe button because I can gladly see you back here next time. The bar is in fact closed. I'm going to bed. And as always, we appreciate you. I miss that time. What about you?